So in the last class, we talked about modeling some more. We went into class diagrams and entity relationship diagrams. And we discussed some tools for modeling and all that, right? We discussed some tools for modeling. We discussed modeling in general. Everything about modeling is under the specify a model requirements part of your RAD, of your requirement analysis and design definition knowledge area. Now, we're talking about knowledge area because some of us are interested in taking an IIBA exam. It may be ECBA, it may be CBAP, it may be CCBA, whatever IBA exam, right? Some of us are interested in taking IBA exam, so we're following IBA's guideline as we cover the software development lifecycle. Okay. So after you specify a model requirements, the next step is to verify those requirements. Verify requirements. So everything we'll be talking about from here are essentially textbook IBA guidelines for how you should handle this, your models and requirement analysis phase. So there will be discussions just telling you what IBA suggests you should do, which is the standard, right? The gold standard. It doesn't mean that the organization you work for would follow this standard, but it is the best case scenario, and you may be the one leading the effort to ensure that you comply, you follow this standard. IBA is not they don't enforce any standard, it's just recommendations. There's no standard that is enforced because everybody can do anything the way they want. It's just recommendation, guidelines. So like I was saying, the next step after specifying and modeling requirements is verifying those requirements. So what goes into verifying requirements? Verifying requirements means you want to confirm that the requirements and design meet quality criteria. And that's broad, right? When we say quality criteria, the next question should be what quality criteria? Well, quality criteria for requirements. And we've talked about the characteristics of quality requirements, but we'll go over them again today in terms of your model, right? Because your model is also something that is coming out of your requirements, right? You are creating models from your requirements. And the models you are creating will represent either the current state or the future state, the design, the solution you want people to implement, or both. So you are confirming that your models meet quality criteria. What this means is you'll be validating that the models are fit for use. That is, the models can be understood, they can be used. You are also ensuring that the model or the modeling you have done really uses formal notations or informal notations. Essentially, you are ensuring that the models use the right notations. So we've looked at different modeling techniques, for example, BPMN, use case diagrams, and all these different types of modeling notations, modeling techniques. If you have used them to create your models, maybe to create your designs, at this phase, this verify requirement phase, what is expected is that the model is checked. The model is checked to ensure that you use the right notations. Right. So are you using the right notations? Did you use the right symbols? Did you take BPMN symbols and go and put them in use case diagram, or class diagram symbols put in BPMN? You see, those are wrong notations. So those are the kinds of things that will be checked here at this phase of verify requirements. Then can we understand your modeling? Your include arrow, is it pointing in the right direction? Those kind of things. Like, can we understand your modeling? Does it make sense? So that's what you are checking here. That's the meaning of verify requirement. So let's remind ourselves of the characteristics of requirements, because those are also the characteristics of quality designs that you have created with your model. They should be atomic, meaning when we look at your model, we should be able to understand what it's representing. So if you are representing withdraw cash, when we look at your modeling of the process of withdraw cash, or the use case of withdraw cash, or the class diagram of withdraw cash, we'll be able to understand everything we are supposed to understand from your model. We shouldn't need additional textbook or some model kept somewhere or a note in order to understand your model. We should be able to look at your model and get everything we need to get about what you are modeling. So your modeling should be complete. Right? What you have modeled should be complete. It should be enough to guide further work. It should be at the appropriate level of detail. And one of the things I talked about yesterday was the different levels of details. I said the different levels of models for process modeling and data flow diagrams. And both of them do similar things. And that's why we talk about levels of details for them. Data flow diagram models the flow of data in a process, right, in a system. So, and it's also like process modeling where you are showing how things flow, but your focus there is on the information that is passing through the system. While process modeling, you are showing the activities that is involved in a system or in a use case. So how activities flow, including their data. So because they are similar, they have a similar structure when it comes to detail. So many of them have levels to the amount of detail you may need to provide. So if you are dealing with a stakeholder that wants, for example, your process model to a certain level of detail, then that's what you need to provide. As I've explained yesterday, a typical level of detail for process model will be your level 1 process model, or at most level 2, which is some processes have sub-processes, so you may need to show that. That's usually and normally the highest. Anything beyond that, you are going into full process modeling where you are really, really specializing in that area, which is typically not the work of a normal business analyst. So it will be someone who has decided to develop expertise in the area for whatever reason. Maybe they want to go into process engineering or those type of fields, which is good, which is great. Okay, so process design, process engineering, simulation. So if you wanted to do that, then you can go into those higher levels. So your modeling should be consistent. It should be aligned with the needs of stakeholders, and it should not conflict with other models or other requirements. So your model should not show that the system, for example, says the light should be on, and another of your model is showing that the system says the light should be turned off, right? So you don't want those type of situations. So your model should be consistent. make sense. It should work with other requirements, other models that you have. You should be concise. You don't waste symbols. Don't put unnecessary detail or unnecessary symbols or unnecessary content. It should be feasible, right? So it should be something that we can do within schedule and budget. It should be something that we can understand. So I think this lady, give me a sec, someone is trying to connect. Okay. So our requirements, our models, right, which represents our designs, should be clear, should be unambiguous, which means that two different people should not get different interpretations when they look at our models. The whole essence of modeling is because language, language can be subject to interpretation. So people can get different meanings from the words you say or things you write. And we see this every day. And we've talked about this. Legal legal things, for example, laws and all that can be subject to interpretation to the point where people take it up to Supreme Court to clarify. Right? So language is like that, and that's why modeling came about. That if we use these few symbols and everybody agrees on the meaning of these symbols, whatever you represent it with it, we should be able to understand and we should get the same meaning. So don't now design a model that is ambiguous, that is unclear, that people will not be able to understand what you are trying to represent. So a good model will also be testable. We'll be able to know when the design has been fulfilled, when the design makes sense, and when you have actually completely modeled the design. You'll be modeling many times when you are developing systems, be modeling different parts of the system. You saw an example in your assignment where you modeled a use case, right? Just one use case. You may have several, and it's typical that you would have several use cases. So you'd have different models. You should prioritize your models, especially when they are going towards implementation. Right? So you should prioritize them before you hand them over to the developers so they know which one to do first and which one goes next. Your models should be understandable so that you should use common terminologies understood by people in your domain or understood by people who use models generally. So don't come up with your own terminologies. Use standard, widely accepted terms. So the words you use. And we looked at a convention, for example, for writing class names yesterday. So you could use conventions like that, things that are generally accepted so that everybody can understand your model wherever you present that model. But in some instances, your organization may have a way they do things and you may want to follow that instead. Okay. Now, the activities you perform during verification, many times these activities occur simultaneously, so you do them at the same time, but they may include checking for compliance. You want to make sure that you have used the right tools, the modeling technique you use is in line with what your organization wants. Okay, we have another. So the tools you have used is in line with what your organization wants. The notation you have used, maybe the template you are using, align with what your organization wants. So these are the things you'll be doing when you are verifying requirements, right? You are checking to see, does the notation comply with what my organization wants? Am I using the right template? I know there was a question yesterday about modeling tools, and I already addressed this to a large extent. I want to mention that many times an organization may, for example, your organization may pay for Lucy Chat. Maybe they have license, team license, if that's what the people in the organization prefer, right? So my organization will not even tell you any specific tool to use. All they will say is, we want a process model for this. So you have to go and create a process model. It's up to you to figure out how you want to create it. Right? All they know is that they want a process model. And I remember when Shegun had a task to do, a process modeling task. And I remember that because I was involved. His organization did not give him any tool. They did not say anything. I think when he started, he was asked what tool he likes to use, and they were willing to pay for a license for it. Right? But they didn't. They just said we wanted a process model. Anyhow we likes, he should create it. So some people create their models using PowerPoint, and you can Google this on YouTube, process modeling with PowerPoint. You see, some people even prefer that, where you just, or Microsoft Word documents. And that was the reason why I was saying it's not the tool that matters. No one really cares about the tool you are using, right? If an organization is providing a tool for you, it's just convenience, in the sense of, okay, you don't need to go pay for it yourself. So maybe there's a tool that they have paid for, right? But some people do it with PowerPoint. Some people do it with Microsoft Word, because at the end of the day, you are not presenting the tool, right? You'll be presenting a model, right? That's what you are presenting to your organization. And many times when you are in these presentations, no matter the tool you have used, whether you use Visio or Draw.io or Lucy Chat, you will still copy the model out of it and put it in, say, PowerPoint to present to the people you are presenting to. So it may be in a meeting like this, and you need to present it to your stakeholders. So you still put it on PowerPoint. So no one knows what you used to create it. And frankly, no one cares. And that's why I said, focus on what is important, which is knowing how to do it. If you are more comfortable with using Microsoft Word, then use it, as long as you are using the right notation, right? Where we expect a circle, you are not drawing a square. That's it. And that's what is important. Knowing how to do this modeling, not the venue you use or the tool you use. So when you are verifying your model, which is what we're doing here, right? You are verifying your requirements in this requirement analysis and design phase. You would also be checking that the models are complete, that your model is complete. So you'll be checking for completeness, right? So you're checking for correctness of notation. You're checking for completeness. This is what verification means. You're checking that the your model complies with organizational performance standards and methods. You're checking your model against other relevant models. That's in the case where relevant models exist. Right? So if maybe the task you are doing, other people have done it before, some people have done similar things before, then you can compare what you have done with what the organization has before to see if anything is missing. Right? So you want to see if anything is missing. You want to see their terminologies, if what the terms you are using or the way you are naming your model or the labels you are using for your arrows and all those things, if they are consistent with the way the organization used to do stuff. So if you have previous documents, even if even if those models are not about the same thing that you are working on, they may at least help you understand how the previous person has done things, how the previous person has labeled things. And so you try and follow the same convention. You see what is acceptable and you try and follow it. Right. So in this space of verification, you will also be adding examples and clarifications if needed. Now, the key thing here for verify requirements is that verify requirement may be something a BA will do alone. So if you have older models in the organization, like things, work products that other BAs have produced before leaving, or even current BAs have produced about the same area or something similar, you can compare what you are doing with what they are doing or what they have done to see if you are missing anything or if there's anything you need to do to make yours come up to that level of work that they have done before. Another thing a BA can do to verify requirements is to engage maybe a group of stakeholders. So if you have a team of BAs working with you, then you can present what you are doing to them and ask for advice, ask for feedback. What am I missing here? Is there anything I'm missing? Is there anything I should be adding? For example, if you are modeling a database schema or the structure of a database, that means you are working with database administrators. Again, I'm not saying this is typical or normal. You may not have anything to do with that space. But if you are, then you should work with the database administrators to advise on what you are modeling. Does it make sense? What should you add? What should you remove? Because they are the ones that will implement it. They are the ones that will take your model and do exactly what you are saying. So they know what it means and they know how they would use it. So they'll be the ones to better guide. So you can have a meeting with those fellows to say, what should we be including here? I've included this and this. Am I missing anything? Does this thing make sense? Am I making any mistake? And usually they would help you. Or you could engage individual stakeholders. Many times you may have a senior BA that you would show your model to put you through, to look at it. Even if your model is perfect, you should still get those second set of eyes on it, right, to help you verify. You may miss something. You may have connected something the wrong way. I was still reviewing a set of models today, and so some people put their include, I think, yeah, the model I was looking at, one model, the include line was facing the wrong direction. The include arrow was a use case diagram. So in that case, you just tell the BA, sorry, this is, correct this. Correct this line. This line is facing the wrong direction. And the BA fixes it and you move on. Okay, any question? So the expectation in verify requirement is you check for the correctness of your modeling. You've created models that represent the Aziz and to be different parts of the system. You want to make sure that you are using the right notation, the modeling makes sense, it is clear, it is correct. Any question? Moving on. So correct modeling does not mean that it aligns with the business requirement. So when you are verifying your requirements, right, under RAD, under requirement analysis and design, your focus is not to check whether the model aligns with the business requirements you collected or not. You are just simply looking at the model to see whether it's correct, whether the person used the right notation and all that. So imagine you are working as a business analyst and your organization asks you to model something. And after you do the model, you send it to a senior business analyst that you know to look at it. That business analyst has not been involved in your requirement elicitation. So they may not even know the requirements you collected. They may not know anything about the stakeholders you talked to, what those stakeholders said they wanted. They don't have all those details. What they are doing when they are verifying your model, verifying requirement, is they are looking at what you have drawn. Can we even understand what this person is trying to model? Is the person using the right notation? That's simply all they are looking at. So it's different from what we'll talk about next, which is validate requirement. In validate requirement, what you will do, which comes after verify requirement as far as IIBA is concerned, and for good reasons. Right? Validate requirement focuses on ensuring that that model or that design aligns with the business requirement. So that model that a pro, an expert has helped you look at to make sure that you have modeled correctly in terms of you have used the right symbols and notations. You will now take that model and take it back to stakeholders, the stakeholders that gave you the requirement, to say, okay, I've represented your requirement. You may present it to them in a workshop. I've modeled your requirement out, and I've modeled, your requirement for the design, your specification for the design. I've modeled it out. This is how it looks. Am I correct? Is this what you have in mind? So that is what it means to validate requirement. You're taking your verified requirement, verified by an expert BA, not somebody expert in the problem or anything, just expert BA that knows modeling or knows how to represent requirement. So that person has helped you check. You now take this to the C-suite executive or the people in the organization that matter, decision makers, to say, okay, I got these requirements from you guys. You said we should do A, B, C, and D. I've represented it the way I understand it. Is it correct? They can now look at your model, your correct model in terms of the notation you have used, and they can understand your model because one senior BA has helped you look at it, or your team of BAs have looked at it and say your model is cool. Everybody can understand your model. So they too can understand your model and tell you whether your model aligns, represents the requirements they told you. Now imagine a BA that does not verify their requirements. So they just modeled something that they feel the stakeholder wants, but they may have used the wrong notation and all that. Then they take it to a stakeholder, a C-suite executive, the CEO or the CTO that knows modeling very well. And he was the one who gave them requirements. And they take that unverified requirement to that CTO to validate. The CTO will look at the model, say, look at the nonsense this person modeled. It's not about whether what they modeled even aligns with what the CTO wants now. The person cannot even model. Do you think that will instill confidence in that stakeholder, in the CTO? Definitely not. Right? Because if that CTO is knowledgeable about modeling and they see that, forget, you may miss the requirements. That's why you are coming back to validate, right? But you are not even modeling your nonsense correctly. That is double trouble. Right? So the wrong thing the wrong requirement you are trying to represent, you are not even representing it correctly. That means you don't even know how to model. Then what's the assurance that me as a CTO, if I actually tell you the requirement, you'll be able to do it well anyways. You'll be able to execute it well. What's the assurance that you'll be able to work with developers well if you cannot even represent, even if if the requirement, even if you have misunderstood it or something, at least that misunderstanding should make sense. You should represent it well so that I can read it. I can look at your model and say, oh, this is what you are trying to represent, but that is not exactly what we want. What we want is this and that and that. So I shouldn't be struggling with your model and struggling with whether you understand the requirements again. And that's why you are supposed to verify your requirement before you go and meet outsiders to check whether that model aligns with what they want. So first, make sure that your modeling is even good. That's what verify requirement is after. Not looking at the business problem or anything. Is your modeling even good? Then validate requirement is where you take that model to the stakeholders to say, does this align with what you have in mind? Because stakeholders, let's say, they don't care if it's model you use or whatever. They just want to know that you understand their problem and you are going to communicate the right problem to the developers that will solve it. So part of validating your requirements is to also understand what good looks like. And that's why you are going back to the stakeholders. I've designed the solution. Is this what a good solution looks like to you? How will we know when we achieve what you call good? What are the metrics? If it's maybe producing something, how many do we have to produce to know that, and at what rate do we have to produce to know that we have actually achieved what success looks like for you? So that's what you are doing here. Defining a measurable evaluation criteria, right? And this will be based on the business objective, right, that has been defined in the strategy phase, and other measurements of success that the stakeholder may come up with. But maybe even most importantly, you want to ensure at this phase that your design aligns with the solution scope. Remember, during strategy analysis, we broke down the 5 components of strategy analysis. And one of them is you should define the solution scope. And what that meant was the boundary of the solution, you should identify it already. So what the solution will not do and the things the solution will do, you should state it in that strategy meeting so that we can know what our solution will not do, so we don't bother about those things. And what our solution will cover, we should know them. So you have to check the design. You have collected, you have now gone. That was, maybe you did that in January 2022. You have now gone full circle. You have gone to all stakeholders around the world to collect all these requirements. You have modeled those requirements. You now have to go back. You now have to look at all your modeling to check this model that I have, which is supposed to represent the solution. Is it in line with the solution scope we collected at the beginning? Or is it covering things that we have said we will not cover? Because different stakeholders have said different things. They have presented different requirements. So have we gone above our bound or beyond our boundary? That's what you'll be checking too. And if that's the case, you'd want to eliminate things that are extraneous, things that are beyond scope, that are outside of your scope, or you want to modify your design so that it aligns with the solution scope, so that it follows what the boundary you created during strategy analysis. See, the truth is, if you have a design that cannot be validated, What that means is you have either missed some key requirements or some requirements have been miscommunicated. So maybe you didn't understand what the stakeholder was saying, or maybe the stakeholder did not explain well. So if you have designs that cannot be validated, that stakeholders are not agreeing with, that means something has been missed or something was miscommunicated. And what that means is you may need to change your design. So to validate requirements, you need all stakeholders. Every stakeholder that you have collected requirements from, when you create your final design, which is supposed to represent the solution, you have to go back to them to confirm that what you have designed or what you have modeled aligns with what they want. Okay. Now, after you have validated your requirements, the next step will be to put all these validated requirements. So these requirements have been verified and they have been validated. You now put all of them together, piece them together to make a whole. And that's what we call your requirements architecture. You bring all the requirements together, requirements or model about different use cases. You start piecing them together like pieces of a puzzle to make a comprehensive whole. And what you are making in that case will be your requirement architecture. So what you are doing here is ensuring that the requirements collectively together, they support each other. That the requirements you created for this use case does not contradict the requirement for the other use case. So you are essentially bringing them together by looking at all of them and seeing how they fit and making sure that no requirement contradicts the other. And that together, they fully achieve the business objective. So in case you are missing any requirement, you will know here. Because together, they fully meet the requirement of the complete system. So your requirements architecture essentially represents the structure of all requirements of a system. And like I said, you are trying to fit all these requirements together to form a whole. So requirement architecture also help you piece together the requirements, say the types of model you want to show particular stakeholders. So you can organize some type of models, put them together for C-suite executives alone, because maybe they don't want too much technical detail or too much detail in general. So, okay, let me put my context diagram and my mind map together in this slide, because that's what I'm going to be showing this group of stakeholders. So that your requirement architecture also help you create those subgroups of requirements or models that you want to show different stakeholders. They help you illustrate how requirements interact with one another, and they allow for trade-off decisions. And what this means is when you have requirements contradicting one another, and you can see them, right? You have modeled them and you can see that this use case and the way we have described it has a part of it that is affecting this other use case negatively. So we may not be able to implement both the way they are. You can take the two models now, bring the stakeholders you got those use cases from, you can bring them together, sit them down and show them that, can you see this is affecting this and this is affecting this. So we need to trade off. We need a compromise. Now that our modeled it, we can see how they are affecting each other. We need a compromise here. Or when we were modeling this requirement, we found that you know, this one will affect another model we have done 2 days ago or three weeks ago, right? Because this one has this decision point that has many things, and one of those points will affect that one. So we need a compromise. So bringing your models together into what is called the requirements architecture can help you make those kind of decisions. Now, do organizations do this? Again, this is standard, right? Gold standard, recommended standard by IBA. And this is mainly useful, especially for those who plan to take an IBA exam, which we encourage. So after your requirement architecture, the next step is to define design options. And what you are doing here is you already have your design. It's been verified. It's been validated. You have looked at, you have coupled all the designs together to see how they fit one another. And you see that there's no problem, no contradictions. You have, everything is good, right? The system is looking good. Then the next step is to start thinking about solutions, right? Likely solutions that can implement your design, or likely ways in which you can implement the design you have created. And we talked about solution options even in the strategy analysis phase. We said there you start thinking about whether you buy, you build, and all that, right? Now that you have finished designing, you have to revisit that, because now you have the specification of the solution. You have everything specified. You have spoken to all the stakeholders. You have done everything. So you know the exact things you need for your solution now, the exact features you want your solution to have. And that's what these defined solution options cover, or defined design options. You start looking at what are the different solution options that we have, what are their pros and cons. So essentially what you're doing is you're defining solution approach. Since there may be more than one way to implement the design, you start looking at the different ways. So a BA must assess solution options and their ability to meet customer requirements, or the trade-offs that will be required by each solution. So I should mention though that designs, for example, they evolve typically as a software development lifecycle progresses, as an initiative progresses, right? But that's by the way. In this space, what you are doing is looking at the different solution options. Which solution option will be best for this design, right? So we now know what we want. That's what your design means. Everything we want has been specified. All the features and how they should interact with one another and everything about the system, we know it. Right? It's just like an architect has created a model of the store you want. Say you want to build this mall. An architect has created it. He has created the design, right? That's what their model represents. You are now looking at the best way to implement that design. So some of the things you'll be considering is, where do we buy land? Should we buy it in the city? Should we buy it outside the city? Okay. How are we building? Who will build for us? Right? Is building our only option, or is it possible to get a building that is already like this that we can buy? Or is it possible to rent something that already looks like this? Right? So those are these options you'll be looking at. So what you did as the BA is to create your, like the architect in this case, you have created the model if you are the one responsible for modeling. Right? So you have created the model of the solution. You now have to start looking at, okay, if we build this thing from scratch, which is what I mean by creation here, creating. So if you build it from scratch, if you hire builders, you buy land, what advantages do we get? What are the costs? What are the benefits of that approach compared to if we just bought a building that looks like this? Right. And these are decisions many of us make. Say, if you want to buy a house, you already have an idea of the kind of house you want. Right? So you start thinking, should I build? Should I buy land and build? Or should I just buy something that already looks like it? Right? Or an hybrid of both? Should I buy something that I can now maybe refurbish or renovate or whatever term is appropriate in this case, to restructure it to make sure it looks like what I want? Right. So those are the kinds of considerations you are making in this space. You have finished your design. You start looking at the different solution options. So what a BA is doing here, or what a BA will be considering here, is each of these solution options. What are their merits and costs? We'll talk about that. But what will we need to make this solution option work with our existing system? Because we may already have an existing system or other systems. Will this solution option integrate well with it? So you start looking at the different solution options and their ability to integrate well with your current solution option. Right. So that's one consideration. But here, your goal is to even identify the possible solution options. Then the next step is you now start analyzing each of the solution options. So you analyze each of them for their potential value and you recommend the best way forward. So you recommend the solution. So you start looking at, okay, we have this architect has helped us create a model for the house we have in mind, or we already have a vision of the house we have in mind. Our options are we can buy, we can build, we can renovate something. Right. What are the potential value of each of these options? And your second goal is you want to identify which solution is most appropriate. Which one of them? Is it buying? That will be the best for you. Is it building? Is it refurbishing or renting? So some things you consider when you are analyzing the solution options will be their benefits, right? So what are the benefits? Which one reduces your risk? Which one complies with the business policies and regulations the most? Which one will improve performance? Which ones will have maybe some other positive outcomes? So those are the kinds of value you'll be looking at. That, okay, what value does this solution bring? And you are looking at it for all the solution options you have identified. You're looking at their benefit, their risk, and so on. You'll also be looking at their costs. And this will include the cost to acquire the solution. Are there negative effects the solution will have on stakeholder? For example, will your people, the people that will use the solution in-house, would they need to go and learn the stuff, right? Whereas maybe there's another solution option that they don't need to learn, they'll just start working with. So those are some effects you need to consider when trying to decide on which is the best. Then you also look at the cost of maintaining that solution over time. So what is the cost of maintaining this solution, each of the solution options over time? And when you are looking at cost, you should know that this cost may include the timeline, so the time it will take to develop the solution, the effort that will be required to create the solution, the cost of implementing the solution, operating costs, maintenance costs, physical resources that you will need in case it's something that needs physical resources, information resources that you need. So you are identifying all these costs for each of the solution options because you want to make a recommendation on the best way forward. So the best way forward may be that you don't need to develop this thing in-house. It may make sense that you should just buy it or look for a vendor and be paying subscription to use it. Right. So you have to look at, you are doing the analysis for each of the options. So expected cost may also include the cumulative cost of design components. So not just the cost of maybe the system you are looking at or the cost of some components, but everything involved. What will it cost? Are there other things that will be required after you get that solution? So you have to consider their cost again, and you consider the cost for each solution option. Right. So for example, if you buy a house, maybe you need insurance. For when you rent, you don't necessarily, it's not a must you get rental insurance. But if you're buying, I think depending on how much you pay, that will affect how much you put down as your down payment. That will affect the amount of the insurance you get. You know, these are considerations. So while you may not see that as a direct cost of the house, it's a cumulative cost. And so those are the kinds of things you would consider, right? And the same thing for cars. Should I just take Uber or should I buy a car? Or should I take, what are my options? And you'd have to do that cumulatively. You look at, okay, if I'm using Uber, the time, the flexibility, right? Can I just, unlike when you have a car that you can just jump in and jump out at any time. If you're taking Uber, you may need to wait, right, for the Uber driver to come. You may need to book in advance, those kind of things. So the time that you are maybe losing while waiting for the Uber driver has to be accommodated in your estimation. So in your evaluation of differences in these solution options. I hope that is making sense to someone. So the idea here is consider other things, right? Not just the system itself, not just, okay, should I buy a car or take Uber? But what are the other things, the other components of this thing that will come as a result of each of these solution options? If you buy a car, you have to pay for maintenance. So you have to also account for that. Then you also should consider the opportunity cost of each solution option. Who can tell me the meaning of opportunity cost?
That's the alternative price you would pay. What you would pay, like what you are forgoing in place of what you are, the option you pick. So, for example, you have two options, A and B, and you decide to pick A. Then B would be the cost of A. That's the alternative forgone would be the actual cost.
Okay. Does anyone else have anything to add? Okay. So it's good to see that some of us still remember our economics. So yes, opportunity cost
I
is
did
the,
BSc in economics.
oh, I see. Oh, I see. Nice, nice, nice. That's good. Nice. So that's good. So it's good to know that you still remember opportunity cost. So yes, opportunity cost is the cost of the alternative forgone. When you have an alternative, or when you have options, if you choose one, the cost of that one you are choosing is not just the price you pay for it, but you should also consider the alternative you have, the one you didn't choose, right? The one you ended up losing because you chose that one. So, like the example Abolore gave, you have two things, A and B. You chose A. So when estimating the cost of A, you should know that you have to forego B. So B is your opportunity cost, right? So if you have limited resources, you have $15,000 or $10,000, and you decide to use it for, you have two things in mind. You decide to use it for one of those things. Your opportunity cost is the other thing you could have used your money for, right? And so economics encourage that you should consider that opportunity cost when you are looking at the cost of the option you went for. Not just the amount you are paying, but what you are also losing. Right? And maybe that would help you really evaluate whether that option is good enough. And that's what IBA is recommending here. That when you are evaluating the solution options, you should also look at the opportunity cost. Right. And so if we go with A, what are the benefits of B that we'll be losing because we have gone with A? So consider that and make sure you can live with it. So another thing a BA has to come to terms with when analyzing the potential value of solution options and when they want to recommend a solution is a BA is expected to determine or to help in determining the value of a solution. Now, determining the value is very difficult. Determining the value of anything is difficult because we are essentially talking about potential value, not established value, not value that is tried and tested. We're talking about a solution that we want to develop, and we want to determine the value of a solution that we still want to develop. We haven't used it yet. So everything is promised value. Potential does not necessarily always translate to reality. So a BA has to also consider potential value. Potential value, when a BA is considering potential value, you'll be looking at the likely benefit of solution options to the stakeholder and cost to stakeholder. But the BA should bear in mind that the value is potential, so it's uncertain. And when they are making their recommendations and talking about potential value, they should word it as such. Right? That this solution may be this, not this solution will be this, because there are two different things. If you say the solution will be something, and let's say you are working in a waterfall environment where everything is documented and signed, then we can hold you accountable when the solution is not delivering what you have said it will deliver. So yes, consider benefits to stakeholder, consider costs to stakeholder, but know that potential value is uncertain, and know that the value to the enterprise should usually be more important than the value of the solution to any single stakeholder. So it's better to make a case that this solution will be very, very valuable to the organization as a whole or to the department as a whole, rather than saying it's going to be very, very valuable to Mr. Nonomu. Okay, so potential value to an organization is more important than value to any one stakeholder. And that brings us to the end of RAD, requirement analysis and design definition.